Very good. So that's what we'll do. Good. So today, first of all, thank you for accommodating this delay. Sorry, and I appreciate it.
Oh, certainly. Thank you for being here and giving us your time. This is great.
Yeah. So I think what Carly asked me to do, and I think this is probably the mandate from all of you, is rather than sort of give you a step by step, this is how you do a thing, was I think what you wanted me to do was sort of share like all of these things, that I have done. And my hope is that that's going to inspire you in some way to kind of see the broad spectrum of what you can do with audience engagement. And then, so I thought I would sort of breeze through just a lot of examples in various categories of audience engagement projects that I've done. And then you can either stop me mid sentence and say, no, I want to know more about this. Or at the end, tell me more about. What I'm going to do for the sake of time is I'm sharing this link that has, or this, yeah, this is just a list of all of the links or many of the links to the programs that I'm talking to you about, where you're only going to see a brief, flyby about it. But if you wanted to go deeper and read a little bit more and research it more deeply, that's possible. It's also at the end of my slideshow, but I thought I'd just give that to you for anybody who wants to have it right now. Does that sound like an okay plan, or did you have something else in mind? All right? All right. All right. So let me do a little share here. Advanced and portion of screen. And just a minute. We're getting there. Just a minute. Just a moment here. All right. Are you seeing a full slide now? Okay. All right, good. These little fancy Zoom things. Okay. So on the audience engagement side of things, what I want to go through are really four major categories, because this is really quite broad. We have the community engagement piece, which is responding to the needs of a community as they arise. Another one is audience development, which really means building new audiences for a thing. So it can be for an orchestra, for a chamber music series, for whatever. So that's specifically using audience engagement to get new customers. Okay, that's very specific. And then I put music and wellness in there simply as a subcategory because I think it's something that is the future of the work we're doing, and I've been doing a lot of work, and I have an interest there. And then the last is everything that goes under this category of being a teaching artist. Okay, so with that, let's just begin with community engagement. I really describe this as musicians responding to the needs of community. And what this means is what's going on in my community right now? What's happening next door? The lady who runs the yoga studio next door is having an event for, Pittsburgh Action Against Rape. Well, isn't that nice? They're having a reception. Why don't we volunteer? This is my kid playing the piano. Why don't we just volunteer to play for that reception? Because I want to support the cause, and because this integrates music and awareness of music into the community. Okay, so that it's really as simple as that in many instances. Now, what I tell this group to do, these are high school kids who want to keep playing, is right in front of the piano and on the back of their music stands, they just have a little sign with their names, with a QR code to their website, and a way to contact them, so that when people are videotaping, which they invariably do, they will automatically have the name of the group and the fact that they can find more information about them. Okay, so that's a very simple way of making a positive impact Okay. So, as you're probably well aware, we had a mass shooting here at the Tree of Life Synagogue in 2018. And, I was driving a few weeks later to a bakery nearby, and I saw that everything was boarded up. And I looked at that, and there were many people who were there mourning, bringing flowers. And it occurred to me that everybody's here mourning alone. And what if I just came and played something, that would unify people in their sense of mourning and grief, and without permission other than going to the policeman on duty and saying, this is only a violin in this case, and I would like to play, and if you don't like it, you can send me away. That's it. Did take that step of courage. I just went and I played things like sunrise, sunset, and then I found a Jewish tune that was appropriate, and I played there. The next picture is 1 year later. On the commemoration, I went and played again, and then we were asked, that's my daughter with the harp, we were asked to go and play for the victims of those families, on that 1 year commemoration and celebration, of that event. And it was a very moving thing to play for those families alone as they remembered 1 year prior to that. Now, it just so happened that while I was standing there for that hour or two and playing there, the Associated Press came and they were covering it, and they did an interview and a whole video about why music and why am I standing there. It also happens that the person who was turned out to write, a historian who wrote a concept of that, included this in her telling of the history. That's certainly not the reason I did it. I had no idea. But invariably, when you put yourself out there in places that are unexpected, just responding to a need for good, things can and do happen. All right. The following year, I did something. I think you all saw this video, so I don't have to explain it too much. But my own personal circumstances, going through a lot of adversity in 2019, and I realized that it was Beethoven's birthday coming up, and by golly, he had gone through a whole lot, and I had to learn the Beethoven concerto under all these intense circumstances. So I decided, after I had actually managed to perform the Beethoven concerto for the first time in my life with an orchestra, under difficult circumstances, I decided that I would offer 50 performances, because I had just turned 50, in 250 days, because it was going to be Beethoven's 250th birthday, for anyone who was facing adversity of any kind. And then on this website, as you can see, it says request a performance. So people in the community could request, and that was for people who were grieving, who had chronic pain. A lot of the requests actually came from people who were still processing the Tree of Life shooting. And this happened on 3 different continents, and people requested these, and they were free of charge. I happened to be traveling to those continents anyway. It's not like they flew me out to do it, right? But that was an incredible project. And the final concert, the 50th, was with that same orchestra again in Carnegie Music Hall on Beethoven's birthday, launching his 250th year. And then who would ever think that all the concert halls would be closed for his 250th celebration, right? There was like nothing happening that year. It's like Beethoven saying, well, if I was deaf, you guys can't hear my music either. Anyway, so that was that huge community project. That's something truly that anyone could do, like anyone could do that. Any of the things that I have just described to you are on a zero budget. It was with a free website. You can do that. It takes no money. This too took no money. So 2020, now everything's shut down, right? And all the neighbors are like, there's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. We have no sense of community. Everybody's lonely. And this is my family. And we played porch concerts, and we invited musicians. And you can imagine, like, nobody had anywhere to play. So that's our little porch. And we had lots of space. And we, of course, did it again this year because everybody couldn't get enough. But we did it for 8 months last year. 8 months. of porch concerts. When it got cold, I set up fire pits, people could sit around them. And so we did it again this year just because, the neighbors were hassling us a little bit. And it's just become a tradition and a very happy way of people coming together. It was all by donation. There were enough donations to actually pay our musicians and then contribute to a lot of causes in the city that it shows all youth city programs for youth music. Again, a $0 type of thing. And then this is the latest that we're doing. Somebody reached out to me, a mother with a child with autism, and said there are no concerts specifically for children with autism in Pittsburgh, and could you start something? And so that is what my CMU group is doing, and Carly's going to help us. We're launching the pilot program this semester for that concert series. Okay, so those are just things for basically what can I do in my community. And all those, it wasn't like, oh, let me devise something at all. It wasn't. It's just a person like you or me going through life with like a vision, with an open mind of here's a problem. How can I help? That's all it is. Okay. So now the audience development part is building relationships with new patrons and donors. So this was my big thing. This is how I made my career and a lot of money in Germany, because they were looking for somebody to build audiences. And the Pittsburgh Symphony happened to have actually an Austrian conductor who knew of my work. And when he came to Pittsburgh, he was like, hey, you need to do something. The Pittsburgh Symphony, we're like, our hall is like half empty on Sunday afternoons. Can you bring a paying audience to come in? I was like, okay, let me give it a try. So this was Meet the Maestro. The maestro here has 6 children himself. He's a real family man. So I was like, I'm going to go after families. I'm going to go after rich families. Okay. So this is not like, the Pittsburgh Symphony Education Department. They're like, we're going to take care of everybody. We're going to go into places where they don't have access to music. Okay. That's another part of my life. I do that. But how about people who can pay for it? Like, I'm going to go after the rich families who have the money, who have the education, who have the interest in music, but they're not going to the symphony because they got kids. Like, this is not a kid-friendly experience. So my question is, how can I make this really appealing to them? So the first step is that I reached out to private schools, people with money, and I proposed this to them. The Meet the Maestro. First of all, it makes them look good, right? It's like, whoa, we get to associate with the Pittsburgh Symphony and the maestro. This is going to attract more people to our school because we are elite. We're doing something really cool. So I had to build this as a really elite program. So I went in, I did workshops in the schools, preparing them for a particular concert. On this Sunday, you're going to go in, you're going to buy tickets to go to the Pittsburgh Symphony. But there was a lot of stuff around it. So then orchestra musicians came in. This is the concertmaster coming in. And yes, believe it or not, soloists such as this came in and like blew these kids away. When Greg Baker opens his mouth, it's like, wow, and then, and they get very excited. It's like, we really want to go. And then, so people then come to the symphony. So this is what happens. All right, so what about all those little kids? They can't sit through a whole program, right? But all through this, their teachers have been already preparing them for, they're going to hear, whatever. Let's say it's going to be Stravinsky, Rite of Spring, okay? But for the first half of the concert, we take the little kids into a separate room, anybody under the age of 8, into a separate room, and we have teaching artists who are working with them, preparing them, doing fun things around the Rite of Spring, giving them a snack, showing them a tour. And their parents are like, I get to listen to the first half of the concert without my kids. Isn't this fun? We have a date. And then at the second half, parents come and get their kids. It's like Sunday school, at church. They come and get their kids. Everybody listens to the second half. And it's like, now the kids are super excited because they're all prepared for this. And they get to be in this big hall and it's grand. And then if they have like a middle school choir or something, they actually get to perform in the lobby, which is a big deal for them. And people hear them. And then afterwards, they have a reception. The maestro signs autographs. They get pictures with him. There's cookies and punch. The soloists come. And it's like a big deal. And then we get the big poster at the front of the hall, and all of the maestro and the soloists sign that for them. And where do you think that is? That's like in the front of their school. Right? In the entrance. They're so proud of this thing. And then they consider themselves a maestro school. And, so I would get anywhere from 400 to 600 tickets sold every Sunday that I did this. And of course, the orchestra was like, thank you, and that's how those are people that will potentially then also just donate to the symphony because their kids had a great time. We did the same thing with this group. C Street Brass was a group that I trained here at CMU, and then we went into University of Pittsburgh, and a club of students, and then we did one of these things where they got a backstage tour and they get to meet the maestro, and there's the maestro right there raising a glass with those guys. So on various levels. Okay, another problem was the Carnegie Mellon Philharmonic. Nobody was coming to the concerts. They were playing for like 100, maybe tops 200 people in this beautiful Carnegie Music Hall. Nobody was coming. So like, Monique, what can you do about this? So I got a group of students just like you. And it was like in my class, okay, this is going to be a project of my class. And they decided to call them preview parties. So out in the lobby, very engaging people. First, when people would come in, they did this fanfare welcome. So it'd be like, whoa, people are playing on the stairs. This is so cool. And then they come in and there's a meet the musicians kind of thing. Some musicians are talking about their instruments. They're playing excerpts from the concert, and people can just come. And then the audience don't just play, but we train them to engage. Hi, what are you doing here this evening? What brings you in? What, so that kind of training as in terms of what do you say? And then they say, well, would you like to hear a certain excerpt from the program? I can give you, we're doing Mozart, magic flute, da-da-da-da. And then, so training them to do very specific things, or else people are just too scared to talk. You know how it is. Then they had a station up where people could actually conduct. So they'd get an ensemble together, again, with excerpts from the concert, and they'd allow people to come in and conduct. So this became like a serious party in the lobby before. And in one semester, they went from, 100 people in the audience to 800 people, and now they're regularly at 800 to 1,000. And then we just kept that program going through, a music fraternity that was there, and it was kind of their job. So, and then, also training the students to go to the receptions. What do you do? What do you say? And training them to engage with the donors and with the patrons who are supporting them. It's huge. It's a big deal. These people then are so charmed by the musicians that they give more money to the scholarship fund. This gal, Annie Gordon, decided to create her own company called Bird's Eye Music, and launch these kind of events for other arts organizations. And now she has a really great job somewhere. Okay, so that's kind of the audience development part. You're going to see another big audience development thing later on under the youth. Guys, have any questions? Are you tired yet? You okay?
I was wondering if you could really explain how the concert selections were made like more enticing, because at face it's like, oh, you want to hear a second violin and a cello and a viola part to magic flute? Well, okay.
You mean when they're playing together?
Yeah, I guess maybe that's just like a group thing. I was just curious.
Well, yeah, I mean, you probably wouldn't not have a first violin part, right? If you're going to play something. But let's say I don't know, here's the tuba, right? So that person would just play like a tuba, excerpt. And then they're like, hey, you ever seen a tuba before? Well, this is what I'm playing, So it doesn't have to be interesting in itself. The simple fact that somebody's playing this instrument right in front of me, this close, is interesting to people, right? And can be engaging. Or if they're playing, let's say they're playing a second violin in a viola part, and people are like, that's interesting. They can actually talk about that. Well, this is just the inner voices to this thing. You recognize this tune? Oh, yeah, we would get that. Well, this is just the motor that's going on, to that. Isn't that interesting? So that in itself can become, a theme. Some students were like, why don't I just play my orchestral excerpts that I'm going to be playing anyway at an audition next month? And so we'd have the flute players doing all the Peter and the Wolf and whatever. Perfectly fine, too. Perfectly fine. So the point is we want the musicians to play something that they feel they're getting something out of it. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so music and wellness is a particular interest of mine, and certainly with the pandemic, that's just sort of gone even higher. So Rancho La Puerta Chamber Music Festival, this is a place, this is like the #1 spa and resort in the world. Just over the border in Tecate, Mexico, and absolutely gorgeous. So this actually was me playing the Beethoven Concerto on top of the mountain. Yeah, when I went there, and they took that picture, and I put on my gown once I was at the top. I didn't hike in my gown, but that was that. And these people, so I just went there as a guest once, and then the person who invited me, who was a big patron of the arts, I thought, well, how can I pay her back? Like, this is like $5,000 vacations. Like, this is a lot. And so I just played for her and her guests. So again, it was like, where would be appropriate within the whole experience here? Maybe when they're doing the labyrinth walk, maybe when they're having wine at the wine bar, maybe like, where can music fit in where it's not right now and it's not going to bother anybody else? And so by doing that, that caught the attention of the program director, who was like, you're doing some really, why don't you come back here as a, like as a presenter? Why don't you come back here as a musician? Because then you get a free vacation and, you could just play music here and play concerts. So I did that. And because I don't just play music and not talk to people, because I present and I make it interesting and I build a program that's going to be interesting to sort of general audiences. And then I'm like, oh, well, why don't I play at the end of yoga class? Because everybody's just chilling on the floor. Wouldn't it be nice if there were like a really beautiful, in that moment when people like so open and so relaxed, wouldn't it be amazing if there were like this most beautiful 1 minute of music there? And so I did that, and people were like crying, because they're so open at that moment. And then it's, whoa, we thought that was a recording and it was you. And I'm like, yeah, and I'm playing a concert on Thursday night if you want to come. So so all of a sudden, when I was playing classical music, like the place was packed, just because of these tiny little things. Again, it's just that awareness. How could music make this moment better? Right? And so I did that enough, and then after a while they're like, listen, we have one date in February, like 1 week, like nobody comes in February. And they're like, can you fix that? Can you do like a chamber music festival here? We'll give you a budget of $30,000 to bring the best possible musicians. And I was like, I can probably work with that, right? And so now I'm the festival director, and I bring Carnegie Hall to Rancho La Puerta every February. But that would not have happened without just that mindset of, how can I make things better with music right now? Okay. Similarly, music in the moment. So this is what I did in Pittsburgh as a result of my experience there. Went to a yoga studio. There's my daughter playing the harp and other musicians, and getting people stretched out, very relaxed, and then playing music for them in that setting. So these are people who would not go to classical music concerts, but they would totally go to a yoga studio, and they totally get into mindfulness. Okay, well, the mindfulness group is exactly who we want at our concerts, don't you think? Like, yes, that's where we're trying to get. So why don't we have a 1 hour event where people get chill, they get the mindful state, and then we play music into that state. How much are they going to enjoy that? And at the end, talk to them in a very casual setting, and they can feel the vibration of the instruments right there underneath them. So this is something that we started in Pittsburgh. Okay, over COVID, when I couldn't play with anybody, I got into this thing. I bought myself a set of sound bowls, and I learned how to play the sound bowls and get everybody really chill and make meditative sound baths. So I play the violin, and I talk about music, and I do this thing as well. Um, okay, any questions about the wellness side?
Yeah, how did you set that up with the yoga studios? Did you just email them and make a pitch, or?
Okay, so I practice yoga, and so I go to the yoga studio and I just kind of get a vibe, a feeling. Everything is always the same formula. So I get a feeling, well, who's here and what would be appropriate and who's the teacher and do I get along with them and is this the right kind of vibe, And then it's just like, oh yeah, I'm Monique and I play the, oh really? Oh my gosh, you're a musician? That's whatever, right? Everybody. You're a musician? You're studying music? Whoa, how cool is that, right? That would be the automatic reaction when you tell them you're a musician. And you're like, yeah, I am. If you like, I can bring my instrument sometime and like just during Shavasana, I can just play like 1 minute, put everybody into a blissful state if you'd like me. If you think that would enhance your yoga class, oh, we would love it. Why don't you do that, right? So you just, again, you do it so that it's good for the teacher. Now the teacher is like, ooh, not only that, but I also have live music in my thing. How cool is that, right? And you just choose. Now you're not going to choose like an excerpt of Peter and the Wolf. It's going to be like a Shokin farewell, right? Something that's like gorgeous, lush, delicious, not your hardest piece, right? Just simple, beautiful. Like the tone has to touch them to their core, right? And you do that. How does this work into what is already there? That's the first question. And then they're like, oh my gosh, that was so wonderful. What else can we do? And you're like, well, if you like, why don't we try this? I'll do it for free. We'll just try it. Why don't we try this together and see who comes, right? And then it goes from there. But you have to start as a member. They have to see you as a member of the community, contributing to what's already going on. And then from there, then you become a partner and you're building something with them.
Right.
Mhm.
I have a quick question. Have you ever done any concerts at art museums or any sort of museum?
Yes, I have, and that's actually a really great place to do concerts because it's beautiful. So there, are you asking me how I would go about doing that if I were you?
Yeah.
Okay. So I would go to the local museum and I would find out what's their next big exhibit coming up. What are they trying to promote? And you can kind of get that from their website or whatever's going on. And then, well, just see what's going on. So I would see, for example, oh, they're trying to bring in third graders to do a dinosaur thing, and see all the stuffed animal, whatever the animals, with the, are you talking art exhibit or just like regular museum?
I was thinking art, just because I feel like art museums are quieter.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Anything.
Okay, so let's say an art museum. So then, if you're like, well, I'm really interested right now, like in like we're playing Debussy string quartet. You go in the art museum, you find that Monet or wherever, whatever it is, right? And you imagine, you go, for me, it's always like in that space, like I'm there, I imagine what it is, where are the people, what else is going on? Is there so it's not just asking them to let you play there, right? So it's like, what's going on? Are there curators? Are there tours? What is the rhythm of their schedule, right? Is there a club that meets there every so often? And would this be a one-time good enhancement for their club? And so you get the feel of the rhythm of what they do, and then you figure out, well, how can I enhance that? So if they have Sunday afternoon tours that end up, here in this room, then you might say, I'm wondering, I have a string quartet from FSU. This is like such a beautiful exhibit. Wondering if you might be interested in having us enhance it with some music of the time. It would be the Debussy String Quartet. If you like, I can follow up with a recording that you can listen to and you know, and imagine what that would be like. It would be 20 minutes long. It's fine. And then it's like, it's fine for people to come in and out, or we can do 5 minutes where people are sitting, or we can work with your docent, or so that's where I would start. You know, give them something very, very specific and digestible. And start small. If you're thinking, no, you want a whole program in there, just start with, how about 5 minutes? Yeah. What can you do with 10 minutes? And then have people pause for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, listen to the music, and move on. And you can play the next movement for the next group, you know, and the next movement for the next group if you really want to play your whole piece. But just make it like digestible. Make it an easy yes. And the easy yes is if people see the benefit for them. How is this good for them? How is it going to make the experience better for their clients? Yeah.
Thank you. That was really helpful.
Right.
I have another quick question.
Sure.
When it comes to the wellness approach, have you ever tried that in a healthcare or clinical setting, or is it more general things like yoga classes?
Well, you know, when I did my Beethoven in the Face of Adversity, I went into like every possible health setting, from the, you know, very elite to the places where nobody goes because it's way too dangerous. I was in all of them. Okay. And in each case, it was, this is our problem X, you know, it's chronic pain, it's mental health, it's dementia, it's grief, it's whatever, right? And so that's what I was presented with. How do I make the connection now? I'm an artist coming in and playing the Beethoven Violin Concerto. Okay, so now it's my job to make a connection between them and what I'm about to do, because they don't give a hoot about the Beethoven Concerto. What they care about is, why is this important? What they care about, first of all, is somebody came in here to play for us. Like, here's a human being. How can we connect with her and through this music? So I told my story, and the story, very basic one that anybody can tell, and anybody can fill in the details for their life. This is my situation. This was my adversity that I had to overcome. I drew inspiration out of this piece of Beethoven, who went through this adversity. Let me name it. This. And despite that, he was able to create this music that takes you to a different place and elevates you somewhere where you don't feel the pain, where you don't feel the adversity, right? So that's kind of the story. And therefore, I invite you to listen and just you don't have to understand anything about the music, just let it infuse you and see what happens. That's all, you know. We would not be human beings if we did not have pain and adversity. Just wouldn't. And if we didn't, we'd not be relatable human beings at all. And you certainly wouldn't be in music if you weren't able to feel and empathize to that degree. So the fact that we are musicians automatically trains us in awareness and empathy. And if we can use that to engage audiences through empathy, what do we have in common? This is our common story. Now let me bring in this music that I think is absolutely glorious, and bring that to you on that platter. And you process it in any way that, you know, that you like. So now we've taken that whole barrier out of this is elite classical music, and we've made something very human out of it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. That's great.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty, so teaching artist work, this is broad, and there's a lot of that. I'm just going to start with the easy stuff. You know, I say it's easy because this is your very grateful audience, right? Programs for seniors, and all of your parents probably are headed toward the well, maybe not. Maybe it's like my parents. Well, the boomers anyway. They're all going to be seniors very soon. There's a lot of them. So you'd be very wise in thinking, how are you going to engage seniors and where? Okay, so universities, I do it here at the university, and I'm sure that FSU has a lifelong learning center as well that offers courses for highly educated seniors. Okay, so I do that. Community centers are always trying to find some programming, and senior living centers are big. Every senior living center has an activities director that hires people to come in and perform and, or offer a lecture series of some kind. And I know you think that you have to do everything for free. You don't. They actually have budgets for this. Okay, so a couple $100, $100, $200 is not, is not too much. Okay, so here it's called the Osher Lifelong Learning Center at CMU. These are folks who are, retired professors or whatever, and I held a series there. And see these people, this is that brass group again. So we're meeting people at the door. We're engaging with them before we come out from backstage. It's like, hello, welcome, here we are. We're real people. We are engaging with you. Welcome. So I got 200 plus, like 250 people who showed up for this every single Monday. And why do they do it? Because it was engaging. You know why? Because we were real and we were human. Do you see that? There's the maestro again. It was called a Pittsburgh Symphony exclusive something, an inside look at musicians and maestros. Okay, so since I knew people from the Pittsburgh Symphony, I was able to do that. I bring in the principal horn, I'd bring in, other people, and I'd interview them just about their life, about things, about what was going on, about their sports. And people loved that, the incredibly human side of that. So that became a popular series. And I trained my CMU students to do that. There was one student who was really interested in music of World War II. And so he put together a 4-week or a 6-week presentation, and he presented it on that series. This is something that you can easily do. Okay, and then I did one that was like, you could totally do this too, behind the scenes, musicians in the making. Okay, so how actually, here I'm talking to a voice professor. Well, how is it that you train a student? What happens in the lesson? How, demonstrating that. And so she sings, and then she has a student sing, and she might coach them for 10 minutes on the stage. People are totally interested in the process of becoming a musician. How did the brass instrument work? What are all the parts? How much does it cost? They're interested. So that was that series, and I've done a whole lot of other topics as well. They're always looking for people. All right, youth programs, toddlers to teens. So again, the reason I did babies and toddlers is because I had babies and toddlers, and I did not relate to that at all. Like, I just avoided that demographic until I had the babies, and I was like, okay, I get it now. All right, now what does the kid need? And at that time it was Baby Einstein, and that was all fun and entertaining, but they made claims that it made your kids smarter, and I was so mad at them. So I came up with my own. It's called Mother Goose Meets Father Bach, and that was my answer because it was real music. This is like Academy of St. Martin in the Field playing Bach. And then what I had, see these little kids in the studio? This is my son, my daughter. Anyway, I had them actually saying rhymes. So saying rhymes in the same meter as the music of Bach. So it was superimposed. Now, this helped actually in speech development for kids who were late in speaking, but it was just a delightful CD. And then I had programs that I would do for preschoolers. They were very interactive, and I'd play, and they'd kind of go around, and it just became a popular thing. There's conducting principal cello with the Pittsburgh Symphony, and I'd have these little these small chamber groups, and the kids would, I just trained them in classical music, and they thought it was the greatest thing. And I'd give these programs. So that was a whole series of programs, and I forgot what I called them. It was a long time ago. All right, then this is the most fresh. Last week I did a summer camp. Okay, same thing. How is it now that I'm running a summer camp? Well, anybody go to Interlochen or have a great experience at a summer camp when you were a kid? Like, that changes your life, doesn't it? So I was a soloist here in Port Angeles with the symphony. They brought me out, and they found out, oh my gosh, she does well. I had a day off, so this is another thing. You're in a town that's pretty remote, and you're a soloist, and you have a rehearsal, and then you have a day off. And so I'm like, well, what am I gonna do with my day off? I said, if you guys have a chamber orchestra or a string orchestra, I'd be happy to visit the school and just go and, give them some tips and just visit, play for them. Right, so you can volunteer. People will usually be very happy if you volunteer to do something. And so they set it up, and I went in there like, oh, wow, she's so great with the kids. And then that relationship continued. So it started out with a 3-day summer workshop that I did at the high school, and now it's its own 501c3, and it's a summer camp. Okay, so I integrate yoga and mindfulness. Every morning we have nature activities, and then music, and all of that is sort of part of the philosophy and the way that I teach. And then again, looking at what is around us and what can we use. Lavender farms are all over the place. That's like their whole culture. And so we brought a concert out to a lavender farm. There in the background, that's all lavender hanging from the barn ceiling. Okay, and it smelled amazing in there. And so we bonded with the locals and brought music into a lavender farm, which was super exciting for them, and is definitely something that will continue. But who would have thought of that? It was rather thrilling. So that's a result of just doing a school visit. Another thing that y'all can do with all of your skills are residencies. So residency is when you go for a week as a teaching artist somewhere. So I was a musician at the Orcas Island Chamber Music Festival. They found out I do things for kids, and they invited me to come in and do master classes. This is for like the adult amateurs in the city, to come in and do ensemble coaching for them, and then just give assemblies, and performances at the school. So you spend an entire week there, kind of build a program and go in and just take care of all the needs of the community. Now, if you think about it, the fact that you're a musician, I was teaching double bass, bassoon, and I don't know anything about those instruments at all. They had me lead the community band. I know nothing about band, but we are musicians, right? So we can hear if it's not together, it's out of tune. We know how to phrase. Like, all of those things are relatable skills. So don't ever say no just because you don't play that instrument. Remember that you are first and foremost a musician. And as a musician, you have a tremendous number of skills that are transferable. All right. So anyway, visits to elementary schools, playing for kids. This whole thing about how do you present a program for kids that is fun and that is interactive. That's what I specialized in. Starting that when I was in my late 20s, I was very interested. I went to Indiana University, and I was a substitute with the Indianapolis Symphony for a while. And I was like, nah, this hall is half empty. This is ridiculous. I think what I need to do is devote my life to building new audiences so that all the other musicians have somebody to play for. Because if I'm here, I'm just going to go down with a sinking ship. So I figured, how am I going to inspire new audiences for classical music? And I was very interested in that. So what happened? I was invited to play as a soloist in Germany, and at the reception, which is where all the business happens, by the way, go to the receptions, okay? So went to the reception, people were like, well, what other interests do you have? And I said, I really care about building new audiences. And that opened a door. They said, why don't you come and show us what you can do? Of course, I had no idea what I was doing, but I went anyway. And they said, why don't you come to the school and we will, we'll give it a try. We'll see what you do. My German was like not that great. But I went, and the kids loved it. Like, I don't know why. Probably just because I was American, but they loved it. And this person brought the press. I didn't realize he was running for public office, so he wanted to look good with this. So he brought the press, and there was a big, write-up about it. And then that was the launch of this career that I've had for over 25 years. And it's a 3-step process. So I do teacher training seminars for all the music teachers who come in. This is sponsored by, the symphony orchestra. There's an orchestra that says, we want to do awesome youth and family concerts. So they hire me to be everything, to do like write the whole curriculum, write the script, deliver the script, be the soloist, and train, do workshops in schools and train the teachers. Okay, like I'm everything. So that all the orchestra has to do is follow the run sheet and do what they do best, which is just play the music. The conductor doesn't have to talk. They just have to follow the run sheet. Okay. And I do all of the interacting and all of that stuff. So, and this would be sponsored. Okay. So I was making $10,000 a program to do this, which is a week of my time to go in and do it, because Deutsche Bank and BMW and Audi and all of these big sponsors, banks, they were like, okay, this is something really cool. This is really unique. And because what she's putting on stage, and you're going to see in a second, is so outrageous and unique, and she's getting a lot of press for this, we want to support this because then our press will look good. Like, it makes us look good. So for them, they were putting marketing dollars behind me because it made their company look good, because they're appealing to families. All right. So, and that's exactly how I would sell it. This is how I can benefit you. Remember that? That's from the very beginning. How can I benefit them? And that's all you talk about. You don't talk about how good it is for the community and how it builds the child's brain. You tell them what's in it for them. Great publicity. Okay? All right. So then I go and the school workshops, and I visit them and I talk to them about the program. And then, strangely enough, they all want an autograph afterwards. And I say, well, I'm going to give you my autograph cards and I'll sign them at the concert. And then they come. All right. So this is what launched the career. They took me to a place in Gelsenkirchen, which is like Pittsburgh, basically, a coal town. Okay. A coal mining town that had been shut down. A lot of people from Turkey, families there who didn't have any interest in classical music. And there had not been any children's concerts there in 20 years. And they were like, what we want you to do is to get teenagers to come in here and pay to hear classical music. Can you do that? I had never done this before in my life, like ever. But I was so desperate. Like, I was your age and I was completely desperate. And I was like, sure, I can do that. And then I was like, what am I going to do? So I looked around the town, which was godforsaken, like hardly a green tree. It was the ugliest town I had ever seen. And there was nothing there. It's like, what can I latch onto? Like, what do they need? I was like, my radar was out there. There's nothing. The only thing I saw were like these blue and white flags flying everywhere. I was like, what is that? So I asked them, like, what are these blue flags? Oh, well, we have a really famous soccer team here. It's called Schalke 04. People are really proud of that. And I was like, I know nothing about soccer, but that's my ticket, And you see my dress? I had a dress made in the color of the soccer team, right? Do you see? The theme is soccer. I got a big time, and I was like, I need a famous soccer player on my stage. And I got it. So, of course, they didn't come because of me. They came because they wanted to see this famous soccer player. And I built this whole thing around, teams and soccer and da-da-da-da. If you want to know more, there's a whole link there that explains all the programs. But we filled the hall not once, but twice. And what I didn't calculate was that if you have a famous soccer player on stage, basically ESPN Europe is going to be there and is going to document it. So now all of a sudden, I'm on ESPN. And and I'm getting calls from like the Bavarian Radio Orchestra from Berlin. It's like, hey, can this lady come and do a thing for us? And so and then that's how it grew. I'm still, after 20 some years, doing concerts in that very town. And now the place sells out and I don't have to use any gimmicks. It's just because I'm there, because of the music, because it's a tradition. That's one project I'm very proud of. But that was my career. I lived in Germany then for 11 years, working full time, just doing these programs for one orchestra and the other. And on a link that you have, you see descriptions of many of these programs. And that was my specialty, is building those audiences. Whew. Okay, so resources. These are the links that I gave you where you can learn, more about those. And I'm going to open it up for questions. Just briefly, I'm a CMU, of course, I teach all this stuff by doing projects. And these are, it doesn't mean much to you, but they're, real-time projects in the community that students are interested in where we do that kind of thing. If you want to play concerts, one is, we have a nature conservatory, like a botanical garden. That's another idea, not just if you want to go beyond the art gallery. Here's one group who came and they trained with me, and they are rock stars, and I've hired them. People ask me to do a lot of things like those residencies. I can't do them all, and I hire out for we had a vocal group. They were fantastic. So I recommended them for a lot of audience engagement work. So my job, I feel now, is to train other people and then just push them out there. Because truly, I think one of the reasons I was so successful is because I was young when I was doing it. I was your age. Not because I had any experience, but because I was young. And I think being young and enthusiastic is really appealing. And I train them to go into schools and do workshops like that. So I know that was a lot. But that gives you sort of an overview of areas in which I have some knowledge and expertise. And I'm just going to be quiet for a minute and see what your thoughts are.
I was wondering, how do you get over being scared that you're not qualified enough to do something? Because I know you were saying that you were doing all that stuff in Germany when you were our age. And I feel like if I was ever in that position, I would just be like, oh, like I've never done this before. Somebody else could do it better. Like, what if I just ruin it by trying to do it?
Yep, I felt all of that. Every time. I still do. Like every time I still feel exactly the same degree of, can I really do this? Every time. So that element of self-doubt. This is what I learned. And people kept telling me and I didn't believe it. Because I kept trying to train other people to do my programs, like the Classical for Kids model or the Meet the Maestro model. I'm like, this is so easy. Anybody could do it. Right? Here, the full instructions, all of my knowledge, everything, like here it is packaged and with, instructions. And the people who would hire me would say, look, Monique, it's really not about your formula. It's really about you. It's like people want you. And the same is true of every single one of you. What you're attracted to, what people are attracted to the most is you. Is your story, the fact that you are here. And it's true that Anna-Sophie Mutter can play the violin a lot better than I can. But guess what? She's not going to play for these kids. She's not going to be here. The people that you relate to, the people that I relate to here in Pittsburgh, there are tons of Pittsburgh Symphony musicians who play great and who could do it just as well. But they're busy doing something else. They're not going to reach those people. So I believe that it's your destiny to reach certain people because of who you are, because of where you come from, because of what you've experienced or suffered or had the opportunity to do, because of languages you speak or the neighborhood that you come from, you can relate to people that I can't relate to, because this is your world. And in that world, how many musicians do they know? Who's going to be there if not you? So if you think about it that way, and that what you have to offer in your story is not my story, but it's equally compelling. And you can I've seen excellent, phenomenal musicians come in and not have the ability to actually connect with an audience. Okay, because that's something that just, because that humanness, it has to be trained. So it doesn't matter. And so that's what I learned, And so that's what kind of gives me courage, is the fact that people want to connect with people. So get in touch with who you are and with your story. And then look around. I mean, the reason I'm doing yoga stuff is because I practice yoga, right? So if you guys are into something else, you just figure out how to look in the community and at everything that you do in your life on a daily basis, and just ask yourself, well, how could music make this better? Because then it's going to come from an authentic place.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. What else is on your mind?
Along those lines, Matthew mentioned a little bit earlier, we've been having trouble recruiting people for this project, like just musicians. And what we're trying to figure out at this point, because you're our last speaker, of course, is what our plan is and to what extent we're going to continue to try and recruit people and train them to do this. So when you're actually getting musicians to do these performances, do you find you've had more success focusing on that authenticity approach and, the meaning in the music and making those connections? Or is it more about selling, what's in it for them? As you were saying with the sponsors.
You're speaking specifically about recruiting fellow musicians, is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Our peers.
Okay, peers. So I have two approaches. One is that, and this is how I did it with C Street, with like C Street Brass. And, we wanted, of course, for all these musicians at CMU to have the benefit of learning this stuff. But the way that my boss asked me to approach it, and I think he was right, was say, just take one group. Take one group and make them very successful and let everybody see what they're doing. And then people are going to want to be a part of it. So when you start with, if you start with yourselves who are committed, and you do this, and then make sure that you document what you're doing, make sure that you're sharing it with teachers or on the website or in the newsletter of, your university. And then you have an enthusiasm, so you're talking about it, right? We just went into this thing. It was so fun. I mean, that's going to that's going to permeate. So that's one approach. The second one is one that I've used very often. People are scared. Like, they want to do it, but they're scared. And so this is what you do. Even if you say, and people want to perform, actually, right? Everybody wants to perform. So if you're the person that's the organizer, okay, now I have this place, okay, it's the art gallery, and I'm only a violinist, so I need 3 more people. Well, I'm sure I can find 3 people who will play Debussy. And if that's all I ask them to do, just play Debussy, right? The quartet. And then when I say it, if they can just play this excerpt and this excerpt and this excerpt, like, everybody can do that. And I will do all the talking. Well, then, I mean, that's how I got Pittsburgh Symphony musicians to do stuff. Like, they're like, yeah, I'll come and play, yes, but don't make me say anything. No problem. I'll do all the talking. All you have to do is play. And then if you want them to talk, and then you say, well, I'll ask all the questions. Okay, so I'll ask you when you started to play the violin. I'll ask you, so you kind of get a sense of that, but you initiate everything, and all they have to do is just do what they do best. That's a shoo-in. And then they're like, oh, wow, that was so cool. And people really got into it when she was talking about all that. And then when I played my little excerpt, everybody laughed because Viola's so funny and, whatever. But then it's like, okay, well, now tell me more, because maybe I could say something next time, but you tell me what to say. So that's the way. If you're willing to get yourself trained and do the work, you can always find musicians who want to play. That's the first step in the door. Does that help? Yeah. What else is on your mind? Is there something that some other speaker brought up that you want to ask me about? Or, I can see that your big problem is tackling getting people to join you. But I would say you do it first. Even if it's just a duo, you and one other person, right? Even if you go in as duos, that's all you need.
So we've had this idea that we want to run by you. So I don't know how productive it will be, but we thought of something to the effect of like club concerts. Essentially, what it is like people our age are like, they're waiting in these huge lines to get into clubs, and we were just thinking, oh, how lovely would it be if there was like live music there, and they were just like waiting and they got to enjoy that. I just think it would be a fun thing to do. We thought of it first as a means to get people our age sort of into concert halls, but there might be factors that may inhibit their memory.
Could be. I love the idea. I love it because you have all these people. Okay, so now they're all lined up, and it's always warm and wherever you are, and right, and so now there are people playing. So rather than just scrolling through my phone, now I'm going to be like videotaping these people who are playing, and obviously these people who are playing are identified in some way so that I know how to find them once I get sober, because there's a name and there's a phone number, maybe there's a QR code or something, right? So when I sober up, I can look at my video and I'm going to see who they are and where I can find out more. But how cool this is. Now the question is, so the only question that's left, so that's kind of what we call like a pop-up performance, right? And those things are very effective. Okay, that's what I did like at Rancho La Puerta. It was like pop-up, right? Yoga class, at the wine bar, oh, you guys have a request? Do you want to hear something? We're featuring this whole menu of Beatles tonight, for example, but so what would you play?
That's just it. We're trying to build a program, but we were thinking of just like pop arrangements of what they'd probably listen to inside the building.
Yeah.
But I like the idea of like cultivating a selection. So maybe one curious club goer can go up. We're taking requests. Play this.
You could, yeah. You can have a menu, right? So that's what some of my students did. They just call it like the menu music, or you just create a playlist, right? And people can just choose what's on the playlist. And you can make it look, you can make it look like an iPhone playlist, and people can, select one. And there you go. And that's exactly what I would do. I would make them short. It's basically 1 minute, minute and a half of whatever song they're hearing out there in the club. And then you give them something to do. So it's like, okay, now I have this drum or these claves here. I have something. Okay. Who wants to? Okay, great. So this is the beat you got to keep. Okay. Got it. Okay. And then you get them involved. You get one person out of the line who's like drunk enough to want to help. And then you get them involved. Now it's really interesting because it's one of them doing it. Right. And then you play, whatever you're going to play along to that. And now it's super funny and it's super great. Well, who are these people? Oh, we're from Florida State. Well, we're giving a concert XYZ. Y'all can come if you want. But what's even more interesting to me is, so then what? Like not knowing what happens next. You could do it to bring people to your concert, and that'd be perfectly fine. But it'd be so much also so interesting to consider this a valid musical moment and not a means to an end. Because what have you just done? You've connected with your instrument with human beings. And if that moved or touched them in some way, you're going to hear about it, and it's going to lead to a different thing, and to a next thing. And it might be a path that you had never thought of before. And if we can take the blinders off and not think of ourselves as, I am a classical violinist that plays music from, Europe, from here to here, but like, I'm a musician. I happen to play and be extremely well trained in this music, which is very hard to play, and I can do it with great precision. However, this person is playing, like my son last week, we played a wedding, and they wanted Beatles music. I did it because to give my 16-year-old son a gig, but I had so much fun. It's like, this is so easy to play, and people love it. Like, it's actually good music too, and it's so liberating, and people loved it, and they were engaging. And there can always be, if your goal is to be a missionary for classical music, you can always make that and come to my concert. But it can also be, and I'm a musician, and I played this music really well, and it connected with somebody, and I felt this, and I made great, it's like, why can't that be a human connection as well? And not have it be lesser than just because it wasn't Beethoven. Like, why? So this is how, if we start seeing ourselves as, actually Yo-Yo Ma is very much that way. I had the delight of having 2 dinners with him. And not once was he like every other musician. It was like, oh, I'm doing this next. And what are you doing next? Oh, I have a better conductor story. Like it wasn't about him at all. He's all about people. He's about learning about people and making connections to people. He just happens to play the cello. And everything he does, as you know, is about making life better for people, making connection, finding out how people from Afghanistan and the United States can combine to make music that is something that's unique. He's interested in what's at the crossroads of what their culture and a different culture, what happens here at the interface. So if you're willing to go outside that box, the world is huge, and it's exciting, and opportunities truly abound. And money too, by the way, because people will pay for pleasure. Why are they going to the club? Why do they go to the restaurant? Why do they have a drink? Like, it's for pleasure, right? And they're willing to pay for that. So if you can do something that gives people pleasure, people will pay for it gladly.
Kind of pertaining to that question that Matthew had, I was wondering who specifically that group of students were from Pitt, because the university or Pitt is basically like the FSU of, I guess, of your state, because we play them in football, we play them in basketball. So I was just wondering, like, are they part of an organization that were invited over, or are they musicians at their university?
It's called Pitt Arts, and it's just an organization. I guess Pitt has a group of students, I guess that's sort of a club, and like every weekend they go to the ballet, or they go to the thing, or they go to, like they're interested in the arts. And so they have these, experiences, and they're, I think they pay $5 a weekend, or they, but that's what it's called. It's called Pitt Arts. So it's some sort of a student club. Yeah. Yeah.
I have a quick question. We had a speaker talk to us about choosing entry points and subjects in which to involve the audience. And we've brainstormed a lot together on what we as musicians who dedicate our lives to music find fascinating as topics. What is your advice for finding something that would be interesting to an audience?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Eric Booth, he's the best. And yeah, he's so great. And his entry point, I never knew that term until I met him. I read his book. I was like, yeah, that's everything I was just doing by instinct. Totally. And I just call it the connection, right? The hook. So that's a good question, and that has everything to do with who is, starting with who is your audience. Who am I talking to? What's their background? What are they interested in? Oh, there's nothing here but soccer. Let's talk about soccer. And being, kind of training your mind. Actually, I just think it's a really fun exercise, to take any topic, let's say cars. Okay, I had to do this because I was like, that's the sponsor I was going after was Audi, right? But let's say take cars. Okay, we're interested in cars. How does this connect to classical music in any way, shape, or form? So much fun. Like so much fun, right? Everything from like the motor and all the parts going together, and this one goes at this tempo, and then this goes twice as fast, and then the windshield wipers, and then everything that makes sound in a car, and how can we get an ostinato is like ostinato is everything in a car, right? It's all an ostinato, right? So kind of getting into that, like, I just think it's like such a fun exercise. And then obviously somebody has to drive. You have to get your driver's license, which means you have to, it's like conducting, right? Like you are actually conducting the car, which in French is actually conduire, which is conducting, right? And so then you get somebody on stage, you get them to conduct the orchestra. And then what happens? How do you make it go faster? How do you make it stop? How do you make it go slower, right? So you get into that part, and I could go on and on. But all of these, like, on that website for Classic for Kids, I just thought about that. I thought, well, if I'm doing something for children, for example, they're interested in sweets, like every kid's like sweets. So I did a whole thing on, the ingredients of music and building a musical cake, and then creating this rondo form, this like A, B, A, and then the cake with the layers. And we did this all like with a real cake. And, so I just find that whole process fascinating. Now those are all very physical, topics, right? Everything I gave you was a thing. And I know Eric Booth is probably thinking more in the lines of, well, how do I process grief? For example, if that's what the piece is about, and then connecting to that with a very human thing, which was more like the Beethoven example that I had given you for the Beethoven concerto. So that's a very big and broad topic, but you want to consider, again, like, who is your audience? So if you're trying to do processing grief, for example, and if that's what the topic is about, and you're dealing with, middle schoolers, right? Then you might just take a Greek myth or something, if that's what's behind it, and extract, if there's a story about the composer, or a story in the piece itself or surrounding the piece, then that's a great starting point as well. Yeah, we do that in my class. Everybody takes a piece that they're working on right now, and they have to find a really great entry point, and then sell that to the rest of the class. And I think it's an incredibly fun exercise.
I didn't even think about that. Just tying the academic side of what the middle schoolers or whatever would be studying to whatever's, I guess whatever's part of the piece that we would be playing, because they all say about college, like, all of your college courses are different, but in a way somehow they're all tied together, based off of like one thing.
Yeah. When C Street Brass went in, and they went to elementary school, they would go to a science class, and they would play exactly the same music in all the classes, but they would do a whole thing about the science of sound, right? Just that. So how does acoustics work? And then they would take the kids, and they go to the library, and they play inside the carols of the books, and they play in the bathroom, and then they play, it's like, oh, acoustics, and why is it? And why is it louder? And why, like, it doesn't. So they would just kind of go down the science path, and they take the very same music, and they go to the art class, and have the kids, imagine and draw the music and the line, and how does it look, and then they go to the literature class. So exactly what you're saying, you can draw connections to and with anything that you want, if you're just training your mind to see it. Mm-hmm. Same music. That's the great thing about music. Music isn't about anything at all. It really isn't, right? There are no words to what we do. It's not about anything, which means it can be linked to actually anything.
I just wanted to ask another thing based off of that. So, I recognize that you studied with Leonard Bernstein. So, I guess how did you study with him, and like what did he teach you exactly?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I when I was 18 or 19, I got to play in the Schleswig-Holstein Music Festival, and Bernstein was with us for weeks, and I went on European tour with him and traveled to every major European capital and played in La Bastille in Paris and in Leningrad, and I'm like Milan, Scala, and everywhere with Bernstein. And so I was so inspired by him, the way he taught music to us. So Bernstein, Romeo and Juliet, or the Berlioz, right? And instead of saying like other conductors, oh no, play just a little softer, okay, now a little bit at the tip, now just punch each, now give you a little far. He didn't do any of that. He just like opened the book and he read Shakespeare to us, like just that passage. And then we understood exactly who, and exactly how to play it, because he had created an image in our mind that could only be the music played this way. That's one example. And then another time we were in like Berlin in an open air, and it was raining out there. Yeah, I was like, people aren't going to come. 60,000 people came with umbrellas and waited for the rain to stop. And Bernstein had he had compassion on these people. So he came out, and he was just supposed to be the conductor. There was a different soloist, but he came out with this big cape, and he sat at the piano and he talked to the people and just played jazz for them. And he talked to them and he'd explain the music. And I was like, this guy is a genius, And so he would always speak about music, and you've seen Bernstein Young People's concerts, I'm sure. But he would always speak about the music in a way that was so incredibly engaging that people were just like eating out of his hand. And it was clear to me that that's what I want to do. And then later I worked with him at Tanglewood, and then he came to Indiana University because he was friends with our dean, and I got to work with him a third time there. So I was very lucky. So that was, it was really sheer inspiration, but you could probably get exactly the same experience or similar experience just by watching his young people's concerts, which is what I do with my students. And where's the entry point? And he has like 10 entry points. Every time he has a new piece, he'll have an entry point, and he was playing some whatever Beatles music, right? And how does this relate? And then, it's so he's entry point over entry point. And so somehow I just absorbed that. I absorbed that, and the more I watched it, the more I was like, Of course, I didn't watch it until much later in my life, but when my kids were small. But it's just like the habit of thinking, not in thinking in your own mind, but being able to empathize, to understand what's going on in the mind of my audience. What do they need? How am I going to help them understand? Yeah.
Asking a more specific question in regards to programming, something I thought of recently was the idea of playing the complete Schumann quartet cycle for the purpose of a mental health awareness concert series. And I'm trying to figure out how to market that or publicize that to our demographic, college age, because I know a lot of us kind of struggle with that sort of thing. What would you recommend?
Okay, why the complete Schumann? I mean, I know that we know his mental health, but
yeah, I mean, I was just thinking that would be a suitable entry point, just his battle with everything there. Do you think that's refined enough? Should I program something else?
How listenable do you think that is for your average people? How many Schumann quartets can you listen to? and still keep your focus?
I would say one of the three, maybe two.
At the most.
Right.
I mean, and for people who are not savvy to Schumann, they probably fall asleep within the first movement. Is my barometer on that. Unless they're music lovers, so. I think from an artistic, I guess the question is who's your audience. That you always start with that. So if it's fellow college students who have, like their general pulse is this, and then what's next, and then what's changing, and what else is there, right? Like that's my sense of, and okay, well, I feel like I've heard this before. Okay, like that's the general sense. So if that's kind of the pulse of your audience, is like I have limited time, and what's in it for me right now, and how is this 5 minutes different than the 5 minutes I just heard, and I'm not a classical musician, then I would find that challenging for the audience, unless there's something else that's going on, unless there's a visual that's going on, unless there's lighting that's going on, or something that's happening that's engaging me in some other way. And I'm not trying to diss Schumann. I'm just
No, sure.
yeah. So I mean, for example, Schumann, yes, but is there anyone else? I mean, in terms of mental health, okay, and there's Brahms, and Tchaikovsky tried to commit suicide, and I mean, Stravinsky, who was it who had who was Fear of the Number 13, and he died on the Friday the 13th, and Schumann or no, Schoenberg, exactly. And okay, and then there are pieces, like anybody a violinist here? Ludoslavsky's Subito, right? That's a total ADD piece, right? I mean, okay, it's like changing channels like all the time. I mean, I'd play something like that, and then make a case for why you're playing it and how is it. Well, that would get my attention. Okay, so this is so if it's mental health, if it's a mental health thing, I would try to create a state and maybe compare and contrast states of mind with music. So one would be that, right, that Ludoslavsky Subito, and then a contrast being something else. And maybe, and here we're talking about like John Cage. We're talking about, who's that famous one? Arvo Pärt, right? That's all about getting into a meditative and mindful state. So if we're trying to do mental awareness, I would actually, because I'm who I am, bring in a yoga person. I'd have somebody do some stretching, some breathing exercises for people, and then playing music. I mean, in contrast, I would do the total crazy stuff first, right? And like could this possibly be your state of mind, right? This is a state of mind of, and then fill in the blanks. There's plenty of music for any state of mind you're trying to find. Okay, that are disturbed and stressed states of mind, and then you give them an experience. So 20 minutes of this, okay, and then 20 minutes of an experience of how can we calm our minds and have an experience of complete bliss. Okay, now that gave me something to do with the audience member. I learned to breathe. I learned a technique. I feel like I'm in a better state of mental health as a result of something that I did. And I'm not saying it has to be yoga. It can be something else that puts you in good frame of mental health, right? But that's, if I were to create it, it'd probably be an experience like that, so that I, as an audience member, feel that I've gone from here to here, and I have some tools to walk away with. Maybe there's a talk somewhere. Maybe there's a 5-minute talk on mental health. Maybe one of your, I would collaborate with your psychology department or whoever is um, probably the psychology department, right? Because and you're on to something very important, because the number one problem and challenge of every university president in the entire country right now is the mental health of the students. Number one. The number two problem that they're facing is the financial health of the students, and number three is mental health of the faculty. Okay, so 2 out of 3 is mental health. So if you are trying to do something effective around mental health and you're finding partners in the university to work with, and it may be your counseling department, and it may be a person from the psychology department, and somebody who teaches fitness and yoga, at the university. If you have a forum where you can bring these people together and have music, oh my gosh, yes, that is the most glorious, unifying link between all of these. Then you're making 3 other departments look good. They have money to fund this. I'm not saying you have to start out with the money, but the next iteration can be, oh, this was good. Oh, we can do another one of these. Okay. And we need $600 to pay the musicians or whatever. Right. And then each one of those has their own social media channels. You're going into established events at the university. Wellness has their events, right? Psychology and whatever, they all have their. And so now they're the ones doing your social media work for you because it makes them look good. It's part of something they're doing. And the fact that there are students at the university who care enough about this to come up with a program, that's the most important piece. Because students kind of roll their eyes when, the people who are paid to do those jobs come in and give the talk. But if there are students who care about other students and they're doing something, nothing speaks louder than that. So I think you're really onto something.
Thank you. My biggest hurdle so far has been coming up with an effective program, really, and thank you for shedding light on that.
Yeah, I would totally love to keep talking to you about that in the future, and I'd be happy to look at it. And
thank you.
Yeah,
thank you. I will definitely be sending an email or 2 or 100 your way.
Yeah, I know, very very happy to. I care a lot about that, so I'm happy to do it. I can tell you what we did at CMU is they had a community, day or something. And for the mental health thing, we had, you probably have a beautiful hall somewhere, right? Is your music school, is it beautiful?
Yes.
Yeah. So we also have a main hall, the music school, that's really beautiful. And so we invited the yoga person, whatever, from the fitness department to collaborate with us. And then we created a playlist of music that was either solo or duets, and we placed the musicians. So in this beautiful hall, they put out yoga mats so that people are in this incredible space, and it's acoustics are cool and whatever. And then we had musicians up in the balcony over here and up in the balcony over here, and then a tuba right next to you. And then so that there was this, they were practicing, stretching or yoga, but there was this incredible music landscape coming from all these places. And people love that. Not only they love it, but the university loved it because they were, capturing this. First of all, it's unique. Second of all, it's beautiful, right? That visually it's beautiful. And third of all, it's students doing something for other students. So that was hugely appealing. And that was something that we did, and they begged us to do it again, the following year. So that would be an event that you can do where people know exactly, oh yeah, I'm going to go to this thing and I'm going to practice, whatever. I'm going to have a music chill or I'm going to do yoga. Okay, I know what yoga is. I can go to that. And again, it doesn't have to be yoga, but then the fact that there's all this music around it and it's like a yoga, concert. I think we just called it yoga with musicians. I think that's what we called it. Yoga with musicians. Okay, that's pretty clear. And then some people who didn't want to practice yoga, but they just wanted to come and chill, and just sit there and watch it and enjoy it. a lot of people did that too. They just came and did their work. So that's another option that's really, really appealing, because people want to do something, especially people your age. They're not, I mean, I don't know if they're going to take time to go to a concert and listen to something they never heard of before. Or if it's like, oh, but if I can do XYZ, well, then there's a benefit for me. And then how cool that there's also music.
Yeah, that's something I'm considering. I really like your idea of marketing an experience of, I suppose, contrasting mental states. I think that would be really successful. I don't think we have like the space for that. I doubt we could get Ruby Diamond for that.
We'd need help.
What are you talking about?
Well, I mean, I'm just thinking like in regards to like making like a soundscape of a bunch of people might practice yoga or whatever. I know you're just saying an example just to illustrate the point of creating an event. I was just going into logistics of.
Oh, if you were to do it in your space, yeah.
Yeah, it's.
Okay, but there are designated spaces, right? There are yoga studios at FSU, like in the sports department, right?
To my knowledge, I have no idea.
Okay, well, if you're not yoga, you wouldn't. But you can go into, yeah, right. And you'll know, we've also done it on our stage, like on the concert stage, because that's the place for music, right? And then we put the audience on the stage with yoga mats in a circle, and then we had the musicians there and playing from the back of the stage, which is a controlled environment that you control.
Okay, that might be more doable.
Mm-hmm. And then what a cool thing, and then what I would do is before you do it, I would actually, stage it. I take pictures, really cool pictures, right? So that people can have oh, that's really cool. Like they have a visual of what it's going to be, and maybe like a 10-second video clip. Oh, and but then you'd probably have more control over the concert hall. And then that would be, well, that's a really crazy, wild use of the concert hall. We've never done that before, right? And it gets people's attention because it's just so different. It shocks people. It's like soccer on a concert stage in Germany. I mean, like to them that was shocking because it wasn't Peter and the Wolf, and to some people to have yoga mats on a concert, on the sacred concert stage would also be shocking. You want to shock people in a good way.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. There's something that occurs to me. There's a woman who's a critic for the New York Times, and I'm going to let you guys go. It's probably like dinner time for you, but there's a woman who's a critic for the New York Times, and her name is Corinna da Fonesca Volheim. Okay, and she has something called Beginner's Ear. Okay, why did I connect with her? Because it's exactly what I had been doing with that yoga, thing. But she's like not as the yoga thing. She's like, what I want to do is have musicians, and they're on the stage, and they're sitting in a circle, okay? And she's into mindfulness meditation. Like that's kind of a buzz. Like everybody's aware of that now. It's not like some woo-woo thing, right? It's like, oh yeah, obviously this is healthy, but I want to do it in a group. So she gets people like for the first 10 minutes, they sit down and she talks them through a mindfulness meditation. And then the musicians play while people are in a mindful state, and they might play for half an hour. And then the last 10 minutes is like some discussion she has around mindfulness and how you feel and what was the effect of the music on you. How was it for the musician? And like, a very comfortable space where people share that and check it out. It's called Beginner's Ear. And she does this with members of the New York Philharmonic and it's very successful, but that would be another thing where musicians could play their music for an audience that's just open and receptive. And that would be another like mental health event for people who are just like, I'm not comfortable with the yoga mat. So there are a lot of people working on this right now, doing really interesting things. And I'm sure that, she could talk to you if you wanted to, but just check it out. She writes a really beautiful blog as well. All right, folks. It was a delight speaking with you. I can see you're really, really serious and you really want to do things. My final word to you is do not hesitate. Okay? Do exactly what I did. Never done it ever. The sponsor's ready to put, his money in it. It's like, can you bring in, paying customers who are teenagers to listen to classical music? And I'm like, are you crazy? And I just said, absolutely. Of course I can do that, right? Zero experience. Believe me, when you do that, there's this emergency hatch that opens up in your brain that gives you superhuman powers that you've never had before. And you will find a way to do it. Okay? So just trust that. Trust that instinct. It'll come. And just do it. I had like zero experience the whole time. I never took Eric Booth's ever. Like, never took a single anything. I just had the guts to just do something. Okay? And then you'll have experience as soon as you do it. Okay? So go forth and change the world. And stay in touch. I'd be happy to review anything you like, okay?
Of course.
Thank you
so
so much.
very much.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Take care. Let me hear from you. Bye.